we are looking at this manufacturing problem, the first thing we're going to do is set up our equation. So it says the total amount of money borrowed is $24,000. It tells us at each percentage this was the total interest. And then to turn these into equations without decimals, we're going to multiply this entire thing by 100. And then finally, the last part of this question tells us that these two amounts, the 14 and 16% together, were the same amount as twice the 18% borrowed. So turn that into equation. And this is what our system of inequalities looks like. And here it is in our matrix. So we're trying to turn this into a matrix with ones in the diagonals and zeros everywhere else. So we would start by getting a 1 in the upper left corner. It's already there, so we are pretty happy. Now we need to get zeros everywhere else. The trick to getting zeros is to use the opposite signs. So to get rid of this 14, we're going to do negative 14 times row 1 plus row 2 to yield a new row 2. And then we'll do negative 1 times row 1 plus row 3 to yield a new row 3. Now we're about to use our calculator. And in our calculator, when we turn things into 0, this is to pivot. So to pivot, row 1, column 1. So that's where the 1 is that we got for this column. So I've already entered my matrix into my calculator. So all I need to do is go to Program and Row Ops, hit Enter. Take a quick check, make sure that's the matrix that you just entered into your calculator, and everything looks pretty good. So the 1's already there, we don't have to turn it into a 1. We're going to hit enter, bring up these rules, and we will choose option number 3 to pivot around row 1, column 1. So we end with this matrix, 1, 0, 0, 1, 2, 0, 1, 4, negative 3, and this is equal to 2, 4, 0, 0, 0, 60,000, and negative 24,000. Okay, our next step is going to be to continue with 1's in the diagonal, so this number now needs to turn into a 1. The trick for turning a number into 1 is to multiply by the reciprocal. So the reciprocal of 2 is 1/2. We're going to do 1/2 times row 2 to create a new row 2. And then we want these other numbers in this column to turn into 0. This one's already a 0, so we need to turn this into a 0. We're going to do negative 1 times row 2 plus row 1 to get a new row 1. Now we're going to use our calculator. This operation in your calculator is to multiply. That's what we'll do first. Row 2 by 1/2. And then we'll do this second thing up here, which is to pivot. And we'll choose row 2, column 2. Now your pivot position should always have the same number. So up here, notice we pivoted row 1, column 1, and here we're pivoting row 2, column 2. So bring back my calculator, bring back up the list of things that I can do. The first thing I did was turn this into a 1, so choose option number 2 to multiply row 2 by 1/2. So see, our 2 that was there has now turned into a 1. And then second, we will choose option number 3 to pivot around row 2, column 2. So my new matrix looks like 1, 0, 0, 0, 1, 0, negative 1, 2, negative 3, negative 6,000, 30,000, and negative 24,000. Okay? And now to finish, still looking for 1's in the diagonals. So we need a 1 here. In order to get a 1, we multiply by the reciprocal. So the reciprocal of negative 3, flipping the fraction, is negative 1/3. This is in row 3, and it will yield a new row 3. So in your calculator, this is to multiply row 3 by negative 1/3. Now up here, we need to turn these two digits in this column into 0. Just use the opposite sign. So this was a negative 1. We're going to do 1 times row 3 plus row 1 to yield a new row 1. And this was a 2, so we'll do negative 2 times row 3 plus row 2 to yield a new row 2. In your calculator, when we turn something into zeros, this is called to pivot. And we'll be pivoting around this position where the 1 was. So that is row 3, column 3. Like I said, these numbers will always match. So bring back up those list of commands in your calculator. Start with to multiply. Multiply row 3 by negative 1/3. So right there in my diagonals, I have all of those 1s. Now I'm going to turn these two numbers into zeros. So I'm going to hit enter again, bring up those commands, and we are going to pick option number 3 to pivot around row 3, column 3. So this is my final matrix. You write that down. And I am finished with 1s in my diagonals and zeros everywhere else. So this is the amount of money that you borrowed at 14%. This is the amount of money borrowed at 16%. And this is the amount of money borrowed at 18%.